Hello and welcome to the Strong, Healthy, Happy podcast. My name is Debra. I'm here on this super hot, sunny day to talk to you about my simple mantra, share with you my simple mantra that I used on a recent holiday. Well, it's last month now. I went on a Norwegian fjords cruise, which was incredible. My son works on the ship, and we decided to spend some time with him, very limited, I hasten to add, but also enjoy the ship and to go to the Norwegian fjords, which we'd never ever done before. And many, many years ago, I think I was 19, I worked on cruise ships, and I know full well what a cruise ship holiday looks like. I know that food is in abundance. I know that you can pretty much eat 24 hours of a day if you wanted to. And I wanted to fully immerse myself in the experience of the cruise ship. I wanted to sample all the food. I know how good the food is on a cruise ship. And I just wanted to have a really good time, not be overly consumed with my goals, my targets. I didn't want to be thinking about protein, calories, or anything like that. I just wanted to show up and really enjoy myself, be fully present, spend time with my husband. And we had lots of activities and trips planned, and I wanted to see my son. Now, bearing that all in mind, I also didn't want to come home feeling full of regret, feeling unhappy with the decisions and the choices I've made. And I'm a coach. I'm obviously super aware of my health and feeling good. And I like to feel good. And I didn't want to come home not feeling happy in myself or my choices. And I wanted to try and find a bit of a balanced approach whilst fully immersing in the experience. And this is how I came up with a simple mantra. And it's literally just came about by me thinking about how I wanted to show up for myself on my holiday. And it came down to this one thing. And that one thing was I didn't want to be a dickhead. And I know that's not very professional language. I know that there's like no evidence to support this mantra that I have. It's just a mantra that I used on myself in a language that I knew I fully understood. And I grew up with this word when I was a teenager. This was like the word everyone used, don't be a dickhead. And for me, and hopefully you can kind of understand what I mean by that mantra, is I just like, we all know what being a dickhead like when we act, when we are a dick to ourselves. We know what that is. And it's usually when you cross that line from enjoyment to excess, from enjoying some indulgences and then going all in, or falling into the proverbial, oh, fuck it, bucket. I'll worry about it when I come home mentality. It's a holiday. I'm here to enjoy myself. I didn't want to live up to an expectation or a behavior just because I was aware that all the habits that I live by pretty much day to day, because they're so instilled in me, I do them without thinking. I didn't want to completely disregard these, but I did want to find a nice balance to fully immersing, like I've said, and enjoying myself, trying new things, eating new foods, but without crossing that line. And that's my mantra. Don't be a dickhead. And what I'm going to share with you, because I'm going to break down the step-by-step considerations and highlights of what that mantra means if I break it down. And some of them may really resonate with you, and some of them not so much. And rather than me make this podcast episode nuanced to try and appeal to all my listeners, I decided that I would just share with you what I did, and then you can take from it what you want and apply it in a way that suits you. And you may add to this list, you may come up with your own points. And I already know a client that I spoke to about this mantra already came up with her point, and I will share that with you later in the podcast. But I know that before I go into the points, that we are all at different stages in our health and fitness journey, and some of us are more experienced than others. Some of us have more awareness and more knowledge. Some of us aren't yet quite ready, perhaps, to put some of these points into practice. And I just want to emphasize before I go into the detail of the podcast that it is very individual, and what works for me may not work for you. And like I say, you may want to add to this list, you may want to disregard things, but hopefully it will help you show up in a way that feels right for you, that aligns with your goals, enables you to enjoy your holiday and not come home feeling unhappy with how you feel and look in your body. And like, don't get me wrong, sometimes people do like to approach their holidays and not give a care in the world. And that's fine, as long as you're prepared for the consequences of having that approach. But for me, I knew that wasn't the right approach. So what I did is I thought about how I did want to show up, because it's really important to set some intentions and having a rough plan. So that doesn't mean that I was being overly controlling or overly restricted or being like anal about what I did on my holiday. But having a plan enables you to quieten all those noises and voices in your head that sometimes, the good voice that's helping you and the bad voice that's trying to sabotage you. Instead of them arguing inside your head sometimes in certain situations, having a plan and setting your intentions quietens those voices, especially the negative voice that is trying to sabotage you, to tell you that, just do it, don't worry about it. And setting a plan, setting your intentions enables you to remind yourself what's important to you. And for me, I wanted to remind myself before I went on my holiday what is important to me. And to know what's important to you, you have to first understand your values. And my health, my fitness, feeling good are really top priorities and top values for me, alongside family and enjoyment, which was also a top value for me on this holiday. So really recognizing my values, what I wanted to achieve from this holiday, how I wanted to show up for myself, how I wanted to be connected with people that I'd met, were meeting for the first time, my husband, spending a bit of time with him, my son. I wanted to really enjoy those things, as well as the food and all the different experiences that were going to be on offer to me. I didn't want to be hyper focused on, calories, protein, and like strict targets or anything like that, because holidays aren't a time to be super strict. They're a time to apply what you've learned and learn to build self-trust on your holidays, that you can apply what you've learned, be able to put together healthy, balanced meals, be able to enjoy some indulgences without being all, without being nothing, without going balls to the walls, without going into fuck it mode, and without tripping up. And even if I knew for myself that if I did make a mistake, or I did eat too much and I felt overly full and I didn't feel good, that I wouldn't beat myself up. And this is how I came up with my mantra. And my mantra is, don't be a dickhead. So these are the components, the breakdown of what not being a dickhead meant to me. So let me start with the first one, which is I didn't want to eat everything just because it was there. So like I say, on a cruise ship, and if you've been on one, it's very similar to an all-inclusive holiday. You just finished breakfast, they're putting out lunch. You don't make early breakfast, you can go to late breakfast. You miss lunch, you can go to the late snacks, 3 till 5 p.m. You can go to early dinner, you can have dinner late, again, later. On the cruise ship, they had a late night buffet from 11 o'clock till 3 in the morning. They also had afternoon tea. So you could literally be eating for 24 hours a day if you wanted to. And I didn't want to just fall into this mindset. Oh, I'm on holiday. Yeah, going to eat it all. I've paid for it. So I'm going to make sure that I eat everything, because it's not about eating everything. It's not about eating food just because it's included. It's not about getting your money's worth from the buffet. It's not about turning, for me, every meal into a free for all. I wanted to eat what I wanted, but not what I think I should have eaten because I'm on holiday or because I have to get it all in. Because when I return home, I'm not going to be exposed to this type of food again. I'm there for 7 days and I was exposed to this food all day, every day for 7 days. Might not sound like a long period of time, but trust me, it felt like a long period of time, to be eating this type of, I mean, it was delicious food, but to be eating it all day long. And a lot of the time when we go on holiday, we have this like internal dialogue that we should eat everything or have it, because when you get home, you're going to have to cook your own meals. You're not going to be having a buffet. So you have to eat it all. And for me, this was being a dickhead. So I didn't want to just treat every meal like a free for all. I still applied the what I call the basic fundamentals at meal times. And although I wasn't, and I would never advise my clients either to calorie count on a holiday, that's not enjoyment, that's not being fully present, that's hyper focusing, and that's not healthy. But you can apply the basic principles of putting a healthy, balanced meal together and prioritize protein, eat plenty veg and fruit, have a carbohydrate, have some fats, and just create balanced meals. Maybe have smaller meals. If there was something, a couple of things that I wanted to try, I would have a little bit of each. I didn't need to have big portions. So I moved away from not thinking that I had to eat it all to get it all in, because, I would worry about it when I got home. I fully planned on enjoying some indulgences, but I was very selective. So it was quite handy on the cruise ship because the portion sizes were very small. So it did mean you could try more than one because they were like mini sized, which was very clever actually of the cruise. But I'm very selective. So if something looked really appetizing and so even at the buffet, they serve everything to you. They served it to you, came in a little dish, and I sat down and I bit into it. Sometimes it looked a lot more appetizing than it tasted. If I bit into it and it was really disappointing, which happened a number of times, I wouldn't just eat it because I'd got it or I didn't want to waste it. I just didn't eat it. I would rather pick a different indulgence and it be delicious and I enjoy every mouthful rather than just eat it because I didn't want to waste it, because it's far more wasteful to me to eat it when I don't want it or I'm not enjoying it. So it was about always having a high standard when I did enjoy an indulgence. And if it was below par, I left it. And this is what I call, like, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no approach. It has to be a hell yes. And that might be with your cocktail, your glass of wine, your dessert, your meal, whatever it is. If it's something you've been really anticipating, and often the anticipation is far more enjoyable than the actual act of eating it. Sometimes when you do get it in front of you and you take that first bite, it can be disappointing. So if it's not a hell yes, it's a firm no. That's what I said to myself I would do. I also wanted to tune into my hunger and fullness cues. And I've worked really hard on this. Now, as someone who's come from extreme dieting, when I did bodybuilding, you lose those hunger and fullness cues, because you're tracking every morsel that goes into your mouth, and you stop tuning in because you're more dictated by how many calories you have left, or what you can eat or what you can't eat, dependent on your tracking. Now, I'm obviously with clients very mindful of this, and we use a combination of tuning into hunger cues and fullness cues and using tracking as a very helpful tool to manage calorie intake. But for me, on this holiday, I'm not sitting at a table with my husband with my head down in my phone tracking. It's not accurate, it's not enjoyable, and it takes you away from being fully present. And I don't need to track to know if I'm being a dickhead. So I tuned into my hunger and fullness. And when I ate very slowly and mindfully, really savoring the taste, having conversation, if we were sat with other people, obviously it slows you down because you're making conversation. And there were times when we were sharing a table at our evening meal. But even when we were at the buffet, it's really tempting to eat super quick because you want to get up and get something else. And you feel a bit more rushed in a buffet environment. I really tried to slow myself down and tune into where I was in terms of fullness, because I didn't want to I didn't want to go past a comfortable level of fullness, because it's not pleasurable being overly full, that you feel stuffed at 2 in the afternoon, that you have to undo your button, or at 7, 8 o'clock at night. Now, sometimes on a rare occasion, and we all do this, sometimes there might be a special meal or something particular that is super special and delicious. It's not like it's a regular thing. And sometimes you might go past that comfortable level of fullness, but it's not really something that happens very often. But it's, now and again, we're all subject to that. I wanted to feel pleasure from my food. I didn't want to feel overly stuffed and uncomfortable. And I wanted to remind myself that food is pleasurable. We do get a lot of pleasure from food. I didn't want food to be punishing and to feel punishing by just consuming it for the sheer sake of it and reaching a point where it felt uncomfortable, because that's not nice. No one likes that feeling. I also, the way I wanted to adhere to not being a dickhead was to always talk kindly to myself, beating myself up if I make a mistake, in the same way you shouldn't beat yourself up if sometimes you get something wrong. It might sound conducive to do to yourself in the moment because you're annoyed at yourself, you're aggravated, and you lack that understanding. Why did I do that? I know what I need to do, but I just don't do it. Why do I do that? It sounds like the right approach is to be firm, with yourself, but actually it isn't. The right approach is to talk kindly with yourself. And by this, I mean, recognize that perhaps you made a mistake, recognize perhaps that I overdid it, and not to let it spiral, because this is where things really go wrong, is when you let it spiral or think that you've ruined things. So you know what? Let's just really ruin things now, because what's the point? And when you let it spiral, this is when you actually take yourself to a place that feels worse than if you'd have just parked it where it was and reflected, learnt from it, adjusted for the next time, and just moved on. And talking kindly to yourself allows you to be able to better do that. I have created very good habits over many, many years. And these are long-term habits that I work very hard with my clients with as well to create, because these habits are like the lifeline to how you show up every day, no matter what your day looks like, no matter where you are, no matter if you're on holiday abroad, at your friend's house, on a mum's night out, on a meal out, whether you're hosting dinner, whether you're on a holiday. Your habits, when they're embedded and you've built the habits, and this is like the foundation and the structure to you achieving your goals, because the quick fixes, the fad diets, they're not building habits. You're just following some quick fix, or a meal plan. You're not really thinking about the long term. You're thinking about the short term. And the problem with a short term approach is it doesn't build sustainable long term habits. And if this sounds like something that you get caught up in, I really do want to emphasize the importance of building the long-term habits. It might sound boring, it might sound tedious, it might sound like too much like hard work. But when you invest that time and effort into building sustainable long-term habits, they stay with you for life, and they're things that you do naturally without thinking. So for me, my habits are, I always like to be active. Now, that doesn't mean I didn't rest on holiday, because there were times when I absolutely sat with my Kindle and I rested. There were times when I fell asleep on the sunbed with a blanket, with a towel over me, because it was a bit, the sun had gone in and I wasn't going to move. I was comfortable. But there are also habits like movement and exercise that I do enjoy. I never make myself do anything on holiday. But as it happens, my son used to go to the gym around 5 o'clock. It fitted in with his work schedule. And I would go. There was like, we'd left the port, or there was not much going on the ship at that time. And it would just kill some time, spend some time with him, and, mess about in the gym, playing around in the gym. And so I didn't abandon my movement, my exercise. There was also a deck where you could walk around, certain number of laps got you a mile. And especially on those sea days when you're not at a port, I would always walk on the deck. I needed fresh air. And that's the one thing on the cruise ship that I really hankered for, was fresh air on those sea days. Being inside in aircon, I really did struggle with. I'd have to go out regularly, or sit outside, or lay with a towel over me if it was not so warm. I also wanted to keep hydrated and drink water, because that's a solid part of my daily routine. And I also wanted to apply the fundamental basic nutrition habits that I have built up and established over years. I shared them with you earlier about prioritizing protein, including loads of veg, salad, and fruit with every meal. And I know how different foods make me feel. And you might know in yourself, when you're eating, fast food, or lots of cakes or sweets or loads of crisps, yes, they can be fully inclusive in your diet, but when you overeat on them, they don't make you feel good. Your energy can feel low. You feel a bit sluggish. Some foods might make you feel bloated. And I'm very tuned in to how different foods make me feel. And whilst I wanted to include a variety of all foods, because I don't restrict anything, as neither do my clients, or I would ever recommend for anyone at all, and you listening, it's really important not to cut out foods, food types, or food groups, because all it does is make you want it even more. And eventually you will crave them, you will cave in, and then you'll overconsume on them, and you'll respond to that by cutting them out again, and then going through the same cycle. But I wanted to make sure that I kept those fundamental basics up. I also, like I say, I still included indulgences, but I wanted to support my own self-care and my mental well-being. And so my fundamental habits were still instilled with me on that ship. It doesn't mean I did them all the time, doesn't mean I did them perfectly, but the majority of the time I applied all those usual habits, those long-term sustainable habits that I do in my day-to-day life, that I just applied on the cruise ship, on this holiday, to support my health and how I felt mentally, physically, and emotionally, and just in myself and in my body in general. And just like to finish up on this, if you're like listening and you're thinking, God, I don't really have any long-term habits. I haven't done that. I don't even know what they are. How do you do that? How do you make these part of your day? Please do reach out and let me help you with them. And I'm pretty sure now that this is episode 101, my memory on my previous episodes and all what I've recorded in the past I have to actually catalogue them, but I have done podcast episodes on healthy habits and why they're important, like the daily walk, why hydration, same with sleep and things like that. That's a habit, a healthy, long-term sustainable habit. Our lack of sleep can affect our behaviors and our energy and our hunger. So it's really important to build those long-term sustainable habits. So do reach out and let me know if I can help you with anything. The other thing that meant not being a dickhead meant not to have the attitude, oh, I'm on holiday, I'll worry about it after. Because parking, like, you can choose to take that approach, but it's going to be really hard work when you come home. And what often happens is that you will never, if you like, gaining weight on a holiday, to some degree, we all gain a few pounds sometimes on a holiday. We've got to like take our foot off the accelerator sometimes the enjoyment may lead and the values that are important to you may lead to gaining a few pounds, and that's fine. But if you come back in it from an excessive holiday and you've gained a lot more than a few pounds, it's really hard to then add that on to where you were before when you still wanted to lose weight. Now you've got more weight to lose. And so you're making it really a lot harder for yourself, as opposed to finding a bit more balance and middle ground. So I wasn't going to, for me, myself, approach my holiday, fuck it, I'll worry about it after. I thought about how I wanted to feel when I returned from my holiday. And I did this in my planning. And I talked about this at the beginning of my podcast. I thought about how I wanted to feel and what was important to me. And before you go, and it could be for a night out, it could be to a social occasion, it doesn't have to just be a holiday. Anything that takes you out of your usual routine, you can apply this. Because if you think about how you want to feel after the event, you are more able to align the way that you behave and the actions that you take during the occasion so that you get the result you want for after the occasion. Does that make sense? So if you are prepared to put on a few pounds on a holiday, but not more than that, then you have to align, your decisions with that. And that you may have to manage how many indulgences you have, because, if you don't compromise, then the likelihood is you're going to gain a lot more than a few pounds. And if that's not your intention, then you're going to have to sort of think about, what do I need to do to ensure that I manage this? And for me, it's not so much about weight. I don't weigh myself. I have no idea what I weigh. I haven't weighed myself in years. It no longer served me. And so I removed my scale weight. And for me, I'm very dictated by the way I feel. And if you're a regular listener, I talk about how you feel first and foremost, above and beyond any goal that you have. Because if you feel good in yourself, the rest of your behaviors will align with doing things to continue supporting you to feel good, regardless of a number on a scale, regardless of any of the goals that you have. Feeling good is first and foremost. And the first question in my check-in form, my weekly check-in form to my clients is, how are you feeling? Because this question is really important to me, because it sets the tone for the week ahead if they're not feeling great, because it can filter into other decisions that they make in other areas of their life and their choices, and affect their goals. So it's really important. I didn't want my holiday to become, I'll worry about it after. I wanted to align my actions. I also, and I really recommend you doing this, is consider your future self. Now, I know it's hard to think, like, we're so busy in life, right? Sometimes it's hard to remember what we did in the morning that same day. Later on that same day, we can't even remember what we did in the morning, or what we did yesterday, or even last week, right? So considering your future self is a really hard task, to think, well, I'm going to consider my future self. But actually, if you spend a moment thinking about, how do you want to feel? And I often use this technique when I set my clients up for the weekend. If they tend to sort of go off track as a figure of speech over a weekend, or continually fall into like a fuck it bucket on a weekend and go into that all or nothing mindset over a weekend, this question can be quite powerful. And that is, how do you want to feel when you wake up on Monday morning? How do you want to feel when you check in with me on a Monday morning? What do you want to be saying to me? And you can apply this to yourself, because building that self accountability to yourself is really, really helpful. Because even if you're having coaching, you may not have a coach forever, And so at some point, you're going to have to build self accountability. And even if you have a coach, building self accountability alongside is a recipe for success. So consider your future self. And for me, I do consider my future self. I don't want to wake up with regret. I don't want to feel unhappy with how I feel. I don't want for me, I know that I deserve to feel good. I want to feel good, and I want to do everything possible to support my health and stay mindful and find a middle ground of not being all or nothing, being able to enjoy the moment, the experiences, having a glass of wine, but not letting it lead to a bottle, enjoying a dessert, but not thinking I've ruined things and then eating 5 more desserts or whatever it might be. Sacking off my walk round the deck on holiday because what's the point? I've eaten a cake. Like, it's not about that. I always want to consider my future self, and I always want to do my best for her, even if I make mistakes, even if I fuck up along the way, which I do, I'm human. I always want to consider my future self, and I want to do the best by her. It's not about being perfect. It's just about doing my best and being as consistent as possible, and trying to find that middle ground of neither being all or and neither being nothing. Finding that middle ground, because that middle ground is a revelation. And if you're listening to that thinking, gosh, all I want is to find moderation, I used to be that person too. And I remember talking to a friend saying, I just want to find moderation. That's all I want. I just don't think it's possible for me, but it is. And if I achieved it, I know that you can achieve it too. And it definitely helps having support. But that middle ground is really freeing, and it stops that pendulum swinging excessively one way or excessively one way another way, because it's that excessive pendulum swinging that keeps setting you back. You make good progress, but then you set yourself back. And it's just finding that pendulum swing that's somewhere in the middle, because you'll actually make more progress being in the middle, which means you're not doing things exactly right all of the time, but neither are you off kilter doing nothing. You're somewhere in the middle. Not being a dickhead also meant for me to have my best interests at heart, being in a position where I get to choose to say yes to something, whatever that might be, or no. That is empowerment. That is a great place to be. This is moderation. Being able to say, yeah, I'm going to have that, or no, it's fine. I'm not bothered. I'm going to leave that. Not today, or not this meal. That is a great place to be. And it is so freeing. This, being able to choose yes or no, is real food freedom. And being able to not eat everything just because you can, but having the freedom to choose what truly serves you is freedom, is freeing, and it's very self-empowering. And it's how you build that trust in yourself, and how not being a dickhead can lead to you feeling. I also wanted to, just going back to the self-kindness, and I know it sounds a bit like cliche and woo-woo and being kind to yourself and, those types of things. It really does work, because shaming yourself into change doesn't serve you. It certainly didn't serve me. Shaming yourself or guilt tripping you into taking action on the return of your social occasion, holiday, etc., it doesn't serve you. Kindness does. And so just remember that no matter how things go, whether they go to plan or not, it's really important to also recognize what else your occasion brings you, your holiday, your weekend, your meal out, whatever it might be. What else does it bring you in terms of enjoyment, memories, the atmosphere, the fact you don't have to cook, the social aspect, the connection, the new experiences? Like, what else does that situation that you're in at that moment in time, wherever you are, holiday or not, weekend, meal, night out with the girls, whatever it might be, what else does it bring you? And remembering that enjoyment from these occasions aren't just about the food and drink. Yes, they play a part, but it's not the main part unless you make it the main part. But for me, it's about everything else and enjoying the food and drink. To not be a dickhead, it meant that I had to stay fully present. It meant that I had to eat in a like to eat mindfully, to eat in a mindful way, to move with intention, to treat myself with respect, because holiday or not, I matter and I like to feel good in myself and my body. And this is what I want for you as well. To conclude, my mantra of not being a dickhead, you can apply this to any situation. Like I've given you examples, and they can be applied whether in a social setting or not. So think about what I've said. Maybe something's really resonated with you. Maybe you're really struggling with something and you want a bit more support with it. Reach out to me. All my contact details are in the show notes. Message me. I love to get messages. I love to get questions. And if I can help in any way, I'm always happy to. It's less about, I just want to finish off. I got to finish off with a couple things because I haven't given you an example of what my client did, because this really resonated with her, this mantra. Let me do that first. So my client was on a camping holiday, and I've done camping holidays when my kids were young in the past in a big group like my client was doing. And I know after a busy day of playing rounders, taking hours to cook food, because that's what happens at camping, washing up and doing all the things that you get to do and enjoy that's part of camping, around 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, out comes the drinks, the alcohol, the nibbles. And for my client, she recognized from talking in our check-ins, from me sharing my mantra, explaining how I made it work for me, she realized that this like 5 o'clock time, drinks and nibbles, was her dickhead time. This is when everything else might have gone really swimmingly well. And then at this time of the day is when everything went pear-shaped, and it was very hard for her to recover from it. And so she set an alarm on her phone to go off every day while she was camping at 5 o'clock, or maybe just before. And the alarm was called "Don't Be a Dickhead." And what she did is instead of drinking, starting to have a drink at 5 o'clock, is she would have a soft drink at 5 o'clock and delay that first drink until later. So it was more early evening. And that way she consumed less overall, which enabled her to feel good and adhere more to the way that she wanted to feel, the intentions that she set for herself, and the actions that she needed to take to go home from camping, feeling in the way that she wanted to feel on her return. And so that's just another example of how this client made it work for her. And there may be situations, occasions, or something that will resonate more with you, or that you think, oh my God, yeah, I need to set an alarm, a "Don't Be a Dickhead" alarm. So do it for yourself. And if you do, tell me about it. Share it on your stories, tag me, or message me direct and let me know. I'm going to finish off by saying my "Don't Be a Dickhead" mantra is less about being super controlled or super restrictive. It's not about that. It's about self-care and looking after yourself the way I wanted to look after myself. It's not about control. It's about my self-care and me deserving to feel good and aligning my actions to the outcome that I wanted. So, whatever you've got planned, if you're listening and it's the weekend, or you've got a social or a holiday coming up, remember to work it backwards. Start by setting your intentions and remembering what's important to you, and asking yourself how you want to feel on your return, having a bit of a rough plan and thinking about what not being a dickhead meant for you. And I wanted this to be the finish off, but I've just remembered one other thing that happened to me on my holiday that was just like, it was like a moment in time. So I'm sat with my husband at the late night buffet. It was about 11:30, and the food at the late night buffet was incredible, right? And we would share a few things just to sort of get a taste of each thing, which I really recommend to reduce your portion size. And often a taste is all you need to get the desire and the craving out the way. I'd got these cookies and they serve it to you. And there was like, they give you two cookies on a plate. And I sat down and I bit into the cookie. I looked at my husband and I went, "Oh God, these aren't very nice." And I sort of put it down, moved on to something else, and then that sort of he finished that off. And then I looked at the cookie. I picked it up. It was halfway in my mouth, and then I had this light bulb moment, and I thought to myself, "You're being a dickhead. It's not even nice." And I said to my husband out loud, "This is a dickhead moment," because I'd shared with him my mantra. I said to him, "This is a dickhead moment," and we laughed, and I put it back down again, because eating it because it was there would have been a dickhead moment for me. I'm going to leave this here. I hope that you've gained something from this podcast, and I look forward to catching up with you on the next one.